All right, we have a 2014 RZR 1000 XP, RZR 4 here. We're having issues with, it was sputtering, losing power, bogging out, and just kind of cutting out intermittently. Check engine light was coming on. And what we found was that the injector plugs down in here, this left side had a short in it. So as we would move these wires around, wiggle them around, the issue would go away. So come to find out, that's a pretty big issue with these RZR 1000s, shorts in the injector plugs. So what we've done is we found some actually at AutoZone. Same plug, a little bit thicker wire, but you can tell they're definitely better quality, better seal on them. They have this safety clip here to keep it from coming unplugged. I'm going to show you the part number here. Duralast 712 pigtail. I think these were $17 compared to the Polaris ones that they charge you $70 a piece for. So we're going to show you how to do a repair on these. We're going to want to do, because these are the injector wires, the injector cables, we're going to want to replace these with a very high quality connection. We don't want to use anything cheap or anything like a wire nut or anything like that, anything that's spliced in, because if these don't work, your engine doesn't run. So we don't want to mess around with that. We want to do a good high quality fix. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some butt connectors on there. We're going to solder the ends of them, and we're also going to put heat shrink tubing over it. Alright, so here's the butt connectors we're going to use from Radio Shack. There's a couple bucks. They're uninsulated. And then we have this heat shrink tubing. You can get it pretty much anywhere. AutoZone, any of the auto parts stores, Radio Shack. Just a couple bucks there too. So we're gonna use these butt connectors to crimp the wires together. We're gonna put a little solder on the end of the butt connectors to hold them in there. So alright, so we're going to go ahead and take the new connector. We're going to strip the insulation off the wires here down pretty low, so that when we put the butt connector on it, we'll still have room to come in and put some solder on it afterwards. So we'll just go ahead and prep these connectors first. That way it's easier to, when we put them in, all we have to do is crimp the other side. So just take these connectors, like I said, leave a little bit on the ends for the solder. Take a crimping tool, crimp them. Like so. Then we're going to go in and just put some solder on these. So just hold the tip of the solder iron on the end of the butt connector. Just add a little bit of solder. In this area on the wire and on the end of the butt connector. Doesn't take much, just a little bit, just to keep that from sliding out of there. Make sure it gets hot and soaks in both the connector and the wire. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and remove the stock clip. We're going to cut these wires back a ways. take and peel this tape back a little bit so we can get to it. Like so. Then what we're going to want to do is strip back the insulation, same as we did on the other side on the clips. We're going to strip back the insulation on these. Careful not to damage the wires while you're doing that. And then we're just going to put the butt connectors, one of the clips, on the ends here of these wires. And remember, before you do that, to add your heat shrink tubing, cut some heat shrink tubing, put it in here before you connect them together, because you won't be able to get the heat shrink tubing on there after you connect them. Go ahead, stop. Alright, so we're going to put the heat shrink tubing on the wires here. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 layers of heat shrink tubing on here, just for extra strain relief on these, because you're going to want to have some good, you want something to protect this joint here, because solder can tend to break if it moves a lot. So we want to put these 2 layers of heat shrink tubing over it to provide some strain relief on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to install these. Make sure you get the orientation right on the plug. Make sure you get the correct wires installed back in the correct spots. So in this particular one, this red and blue wire here goes on the passenger side of this clip. Just want to get that on there and crimp it real good. Like so. Same for the other side here. Sorry about the lawnmower in the background. Go ahead and crimp that side good. So they're both crimped. We're going to solder. We're going to solder this side just like we did the other side, and then we'll put our heat shrink tubing on. That soak in and let it cool. see it soak in and it'll be absorbed into that butt connector. You're going to want to let it cool real good before you put the heat shrink tubing on, because you don't want your heat shrink tubing to shrink as you're sliding it over the connectors. Alright, we're going to go ahead and just slide the heat shrink tubing over the connectors here. And like I said, I've got two layers of heat shrink tubing, so I'm going to heat shrink this one on there first and then put the blue one over it and heat shrink that. That'll give it a little bit extra strength and strain relief so that those soldered connections don't break off. I forgot my heat gun, so we're going to go ahead and try to do this with a hair dryer. As you can see, that shrunk up and sucked up against the connectors there, so we'll put the blue over it. Get these really hot on both sides and make sure they shrink all the way. Alright, so there it is with the heat shrink tubing on it. And then we're just going to go ahead and wrap that whole thing in electrical tape just for another added precaution, extra protection for that connection. So let me wrap that real quick. Alright, so there's the finished connection with the electrical tape around it. You're just going to want to go ahead and plug this connector back in. Like so, and that's it. It's finished on that side. We'll go ahead and start it up here in a minute. Make sure she runs. Alright, there's the finished product. We're going to fire it up now. See how it runs.